Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. This is DGI-392 and with me is my co-host Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel, sir. How are you?
Namaskar and good morning and good afternoon to everybody and happy Gita Jayanti day today and looking forward to the appropriate markets day today.
Yes, indeed, and happy Gita Jayanti to all of you who are watching. Sridharji, the United States market news jobs report came out 263,000 jobs. It was a bit of an unexpected surprise on a good side, isn't it?
Very positive news and there's clearly buoyancy that is in the markets. We talked about the transition that is taking place. COVID was more about digital, and then as we shift from COVID to a normalized but this gridlocked economy that we are in, and the jobs are going back into traditional sectors such as healthcare, services, and particular services here more around the what you call is the retail as well as the restaurant and those types of businesses. And so very unusual data coming out. It surprised the Fed, and they are now, this puts the monetary policy at a bit of a hunker, which is to say you raise the interest rates with the hope that the unemployment levels will go up, the demand will come down. As a result, the inflation will come down. It's exactly the opposite that is happening in the market, Sriji.
But next week we are going to have the producer price index and the consumer price index, and that might give us a better clue because those will be probably indicating something else. Your thoughts, sir?
I think that there are trend lines that show the inflation is coming down. There's no doubt, but whether it is a temporary or whether you may see some other trigger, will soon come to know. On Thursday, DGI, we shared three important data elements: the reduction in the gas prices relative to where we were in February. We also showed some other data relating to oil, which we'll cover in a minute. But the fact is that all helped in reducing the inflation. But there is a new threat looming in the horizon. So therefore, there is a bit of an uncertainty as we step into 2023, Sriji.
Sridharji, the EU has agreed. The EU has reached an agreement with Russia to cap the price at $60 a barrel of crude. The Russian oil, does it come close to the WTI or the Brent, sir?
The Russian oil comes below both those because they are discounting and giving it to people like India, and they are giving it to people like China and some other players. So they are getting fairly discounted prices. So the question, therefore, is this is the reason why that they want Russian supplies to come mainstream but not operate off stream. By operating off stream, then basically you are not able to get mainstream the supplies. At the same time, you are not able to thwart these whole sanctions that you are trying to impose. So the sanctions failed, okay, and so they're trying to bring mainstream at $60. Russia is saying to hell with it because it's not economically competitive. So what is going to happen will unfold in the next couple of weeks.
Sridharji, what does it mean for me? I still drive a petrol-driven car, and if I pull up to the pump, will that price reflect it? Like right now, it's $4.75 a gallon today, sir.
No, we go back to the base prices. The market price is still for the Brent is around $90 or 88 to 90. The WTI crude is somewhere close to $80, right? So we were below 80. We just have got inched past 80. So that is the futures today for conventional oil supplies that is coming from OPEC. But instead of imposing sanctions, what you're saying is the 44% of the energy supplies comes to Europe from Russia. They're saying you can't discount it and buy it from Russia at $35 or $40 or $50 and conduct your own rupee ruble trade and renminbi ruble trade, but ruble trade, and then bring them mainstream, and cap the price at $60. The penalty that they're trying to impose on the Russians is the $25 delta between what the market price is and what they want to set. The reason that they're putting this differential of Russian oil price versus the market price is to ensure that this extra $25 is not sustaining the Russian war machine. I just don't think Vladimir Putin is stupid enough to accept this price cap. So he's just basically going to say to hell with it.
But I thought they reached an agreement, sir.
No, the EU reached an agreement. Not the EU and Russia reached an agreement. So within EU,
so EU, inside the camp there were a lot of fights, and those guys have now said, okay, 60.
60, yeah. So one fellow said no, $30, $35. They said some fellows in the EU said no, we can't get $35. Okay, so he says no, at $35 we'll have plenty of supplies. We are suffering from already the inflationary pressures. Then the G7 nations, some of them are sitting G7. They say, no, you can't do that. You can't beat G7 and you can't beat G20. So this is the internal tensions, which is Russia would be happy to get it at $40 and basically beat G7 and G20. In the process, they're creating a new economic order. So which is what the disruption within EU was. So the consensus was within EU. And that means EU, Australia, and United States will follow the same kind of a pattern. But India has stated, okay, we'll think about it, but we have the right to kind of choose whosoever and however we want to buy the oil.
So because US doesn't import any oil from Russia, the prices for US still stay the same, the WTI price and the Brent price, isn't it?
Exactly, the WTI. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, which I said, you and I are not going to be impacted at the tills when we fill up our gas for the holidays, Sriji. And we have to be thankful our gas prices are not going to go up and our energy bills going to shoot up this particular winter.
Very Shakespearean, sir. Much ado about nothing. So let's move on to the next topic. I just wanted to, see, so this is one side. So EU has agreed that they will ask for $60 a barrel from Russia. Now, OPEC is getting a little itchy. They want to reduce production, which means they want to raise the price. US used to be the safety valve because of the shale production. US was the safety valve. So these guys would not run off too far. What do you think is going to be the safety valve now? Russia?
Venezuela.
So today we are having all sorts of surprises. Please go ahead, sir. Why Venezuela?
Well, I think Chevron, as we came in, Chevron has just, you remember that when Mr. Biden went to Saudi Arabia, Saudi said, no way, Jose, we're not going to increase our production. We're not going to please you. Okay, that's what he came back. So now he said, okay, let's go to Venezuela. Let's go to, whosoever, maybe even Cuba. Let's go to the adjacent nations, whosoever can give us. So two things have happened. One, he has increased the capacity in the, we covered this in the Mexican Gulf area, the shorelines of New Orleans and Texas, and increased the capacity by 2 million barrels a day. I think he's also allowed Chevron. Remember, Chevron was in Shacklin 1 project. They unwound their equity. They allowed them to take position and expand their capacity in Venezuela. So we may see some supplies coming from Venezuela in. But whether it will be adequate to bring the prices down is a very big question mark, Sriji. The reason why we are suffering, the world is suffering, is for two reasons. One, we did not renew licenses, and we cut licenses that we had granted prior during the Trump regime. So we neither renewed, but we cut, and we also, the augmentative capacity that was coming from the Michigan as well as the Keystone pipeline, both cut. So therefore, we are cutting all our fingers, and with the hope that somehow the fingers would grow and the hand will be normal. And that doesn't look like that, Sri, right now.
Well, if global warming can become climate change, anything can happen, sir.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have inflation problem while we are trying to solve the climate problem, and the climate problem is not going to be solved. The inflation problem is only going to exacerbate, and people are going to suffer, and especially during the winter. So I think this whole thing has been completely mismanaged. by the Biden administration. But remember, but let's see what happens. That's one of the first three items that the incoming GOP or the new House majority is going to address. We were net exporter, and in 2020 we were exporter. So we had a lot of not only domestic, but we were feeding the world. But now we are likely to be an importer if we don't augment our capacity.
Sridharji, the next news item is about Twitter and all the revelations that are coming out. Um, I did a 10-minute segment with much more data than what is there, just based on that one thread by the reporter Matt Taibbi. There is one other thread that was running. I don't know if you know, there is a video blogger who's pretty popular, I heard, Sagar NJT. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I've heard of Saga Encheti. The reason why Matt comes in is Elon Musk specifically chose him.
Yes,
and he
to show
began
the
to release. He chose him, and he has begun to release the files through him. So a lot of the narratives that we are getting is through Elon Musk released files. If you recall, we were just waiting for this information. Our famous lady, Vijaya Gadde, she seems to be at the centerpiece of her what you call international policing of what the agenda ought to be. She did not spare any country. I mean, Brazil, any of the other elections that were going on, she decided to employ her unique kind of power that she seems to have. You know, I have a saying, wherever it is, there is left-wing liberalism and communism and this loonism, you can guarantee there will be one Indian name very much embedded into that. So you go anywhere, it doesn't matter. So you can see this, people always critique the West, but the person who has spearheaded, both her spokesperson as well as the chief kind of the trust officer who have questioned the wisdom of the specific policy in the internal dialogue. So I haven't seen your monologue, Shriji. I'll take a look at the monologue, but it's interesting as to what aspects you touched on in the monologue, Shriji.
So I touched upon the Matt story. That is one side. The other side is Sagar NJT has a slightly different, not different, but he has added more data to it. Basically, he says that there was no such rule under which they were going to suppress the story. So according to him, she made up that rule and then went back and applied that rule to an already released story. And then yes. Jack, who is vacationing in Indonesia, comes to know of it a few hours later, and he says, no, we are going back. And then he changes the rule, and she herself releases a new rule also. Now, the first rule that she had said, that one, Matt got it from the archives, which means most likely Twitter deleted it. Everywhere they had put it, sanitized it. They tried to kind of clean it. That's a problem. Now, the challenge is, if even after they reversed the rule or whatever, the New York Post thing was still banned. I don't think they allowed it right away. It took a couple of days before Twitter came back and said, okay, isn't it so? When did the story come out?
20 days. 20 days.
No, 20. So it was after the election then.
It was after the election. The New York Post was banned on Twitter. So there's no way you can get any access to the New York Times data. 20 days. New York Post data.
New York Post, yeah.
New York Post data. And the information that I have is they came up with this theory, which the lady came up with this theory, which is called, it could potentially have been the hacked version. So the veracity of the story cannot be validated because it could have been a hacked version. So this is the claim that they used to backpedal and justify, given they have a friendly administration sitting right there, and which is why the two people internally has questioned, which is namely to say, how do we kind of, how can we say when we don't know it is hacked, how can we say that it is potentially a hacked story as a policy for us? But you would have no holes of it. And this is the same lie that they used, Jack Dorsey used, as you have correctly said. Jack Dorsey was not aware when he came to realize it was too late. But the fact is that it was done, and then this thing continued. So the thing never got. People who are trying to click on those links, came up with that there was no data available. So, and then as you correctly pointed out, most of the stories were deleted. So they was not in the files for them to extract. And
in
they put a 20-day ban, no, on New York Post.
in Sir, including if supposing I direct messaged you, you know the direct message, right? There's a Twitter feature called direct message. Even those were cut. I'll go more. She's in more trouble. From what if it is 20 days, she's in bigger trouble. I'll tell you one other thing she did. The White House spokesperson, she just touched upon it, saying there is a New York Post story, and her Twitter account got suspended. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, you can't even talk about it. Forget about. I mean, that person isn't saying this is hacked or not hacked. She just said that New York Post has carried a story about Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah.
That was it. And for that, her account was suspended. So the proverbial excrement did hit the rotating mechanism on the ceiling, sir.
Indeed, there are three aspects, Sriji. I think one aspect is unilateral banning of suspension of accounts, whosoever they felt, as a policy framework. The second is the content was compromised, the content editorial compromised using the theory. Clearly, there was a hidden agenda, which was somehow they are garlanding Vijaya Gadde with this, which is to say that she became the sole person and with the power to enforce. I just don't buy into that how she could have such a type of power, especially if she's sitting in the kind of the management committee with few other people. There's going to be more coming out. This is only the first snippets of what we are seeing. There's going to be releases about more elections where Twitter has interfered along these lines. And whether there was, though they say that there was a direct connection with the administration, but it is very interesting to see as to what will come out when the investigations come out. It may not go to the Biden's office, but it's certainly somewhere within the paraphernalia of the setup within the administration. This certainly has reached the tentacles. And this is the second item of investigation, which is the new House members that will take up the collaboration between the left-wing liberal media as well as this particular group within the Democratic administration. Whether there are sitting members, whether there are some other people within, we don't know. We'll come to know.
And clearly, the buck stops with Jack, who was the CEO at that point of time. I mean, he can say that I didn't know, but really, you are the one who's signing off the document.
Exactly.
So the onus is on him also. So he's also in some serious trouble here. So, sir, let's wait and watch. And viewers, we are going to be at the forefront of giving you all this information because I think Twitter unfairly affected a lot of the people in India in a way that probably was not very good. So I think India bore more brunt than US, in my opinion. Let's go to the next line item. Sridharji, this IRS report that IRS watchdog has said that it found no evidence to the New York Times report that President Trump ordered audits of the former FBI chiefs James Comey and Andrew McCabe. These two served under Trump, didn't they?
Correct. They were under Trump. And basically, there was New York Times story, which is to say that because they were little renegades. One of the Trump challenges was he chose a lot of people, who were at least trying to turn against him. And the New York Times published that to put them down or to compromise, he ordered the internal audit against this. And actually, the independent audit finds that there is no such evidence to that to the report that New York Times has published. Now, this is just to wrap up before we go to the next. What we are seeing Twitter is only the tip of the iceberg. This is not just only Twitter. There is a broad coalition of left-wing media that includes social platforms like Facebook, probably Pinterest, etc., Instagram, etc., and then your traditional digital and print media like New York Times and CNN and so on. There's a broad collusion in terms of either misrepresenting the facts or claiming ignorance or claiming error after doing enough damage. So it's a consistent pattern. And I think in the digital and print media, probably New York Times is going to be another one, which is going to be at the forefront of the broad investigation on the media collaboration in misrepresenting and misinforming and misguiding the public. Election is only one, Sriji. This is a bigger
Yes.
story.
Absolutely. And viewers, if you want to know more about James Comey and why the Trump administration fired him, look up on YouTube Steve Bannon's stories, because he was still the strategic person inside the White House at that point of time. Something really nasty happened. Please do take a look at that if you want to know a little bit more about why the FBI director got fired. Now, let's take a look at the next line item. As the chair of G7 nations for the year 2023, Japan must be central to the reconstruction of Japan, says European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Sridharji, I'm trying to understand this.
Ukraine. That's not Japan. It's Ukraine.
It's Ukraine. Oh, okay. Now I understand. So, sir, please go ahead, sir.
No, I think the basically there's a three set of stories. They are not going to let Ukraine kind of off the radar. It seems like they're hell-bent on pouring billions and billions of dollars, which only encourages Ukraine not to come to the negotiating table for some kind of a resolution. So what we are witnessing is, now, Japan, you are the head of the G7, so you should be the centerpiece of leading these efforts from a G7 point of view, says the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, because that would be the routing arm of diverting the funds, whether when it is coming from G7 countries or EU countries, in pouring that money into Ukraine. So what does that mean? Mr. Zelensky says, I'm not going to negotiate. I'll continue to fight because they're going to put close to $500 billion to rebuild my country. So this is why the war has no end. It continues, Sriji.
And now Putin steps up the heat, blaming continued destructive Western aid for lack of peace talks. And the US Secretary of State Blinken says that Biden will tell Putin that US will stand up to all the pressures to protect and defend the sovereignty of Ukraine. So more spending on Ukraine plans, sir?
Yeah, money continues to go. Money continues to flow into Ukraine. We just sent $700 million from United States. So this is another item. This is not one of the top 3 items, but this is one of the probably top 10 items that the new House is going to take up, which is to say, okay, we want to support, but it cannot be draining our money and draining our resources when we have a huge deficit problem and an inflation problem. And we have to bring the parties to the table to bring this war to an end. Otherwise, this is nonsensical, and I think that's what is going on. I don't know why Biden is not willing to talk to Putin and say, look, let's kind of sit down and decide. Certain things are not going to be possible. Let's agree on what are 2-3 things that will be possible that we can agree on. We move forward, and one of them could be to give him some price premium on his energy or oil, or make him a preferred supplier. To augment, then that means he continues to build economic reserves. I don't know why they're not doing, but they're continuing to say, drain the resources and make this guy fight. There's no win, there's no loss. It's just continued drain of resources of both the nations.
Sridharji, Britain, Canada, they're all jumping in to aid Taiwan now, and China is jumping up and down. So slowly but steadily, it's not just the Quad. Many other countries are also joining this. I wouldn't say there's a named coalition, but everybody is now saying we will help Taiwan. Honestly, do you think that China is going to invade Taiwan given all the unrest that is happening inside?
We will do one of the DGI sessions. As a delegation, we'll be visiting and we'll be broadcasting from Taipei. Why we alone should not be having a delegation visiting Taiwan, Sriji? Australia is going, everybody is going to, Australian Prime Minister says, we are backbenchers are going, not the government that is going. So we'll also go and do exercise. Exercise our sympathy and say we are a delegation coming down. To your point, is China going to invade? According to some pictures, I don't know. Everything is corroborative and very difficult to quantify. You probably know There is a war machine that is being set in motion and preparation. And we covered that as a story, which is in coordination with Russia, both on the northern and the southern side. That is, it's not just restricted to East China Sea, it is also to the Sea of Japan. So I think that particular, what you call area, if it is not today, it is not tomorrow, it is going to happen in near future, unless there is a very major setback for Mr. Xi Jinping within his inshores. And I'm sure you probably are aware things are not very quiet in China right now.
Yes, indeed, sir. Excuse me for my cough. Remittances into India cross 100 billion for the first time. And this is something really special, sir. I mean, it used to be around 80 billion for a few years. The sudden jump to 100 billion, is this because of the new industry that India has founded?
No, it's bang for the buck. When when you are getting $1, you are getting 65 rupees. If you're getting $1, 80 rupees, you will be sending more dollars because you want more rupees. So I think that there are, jokes aside, there are three essential reasons. One, first and foremost, there's more expats now working overseas from India. That's number one reason. Their tentacles have extended now. That's number one. Number two is that people have been confined. There's no holiday travel. There is nothing. So there is a lot of disposable savings, which is also being sent. And three, I think that they're also leveraging the rates that is favorable, which I mentioned to you. Once upon a time, I actually used to do a report for World Bank. This is going back to between 2002, 2003 to 2010. Those days, we were predicting remittances to be about $1 trillion. Okay, Mexico was the number one, and India was number three, with China being number two. Now today, because of all the post 2008, 2009, the remittances contracted. Believe it or not, this 100 billion is pegged against a total remittance likely to be about 620 billion. So it's a significant chunk of money that is coming in of the remittances from India. That's number one. Number two, China has relegated to number three. Mexico has come back to number two position. So which means that thanks to our porous border and thanks to our generosity in bringing our neighbors back into our countries. So therefore, there is very good money flowing in. So I think $100 billion is a significant number. This is one of the areas that India is focusing on to boost its reserves.
Sridharji, finally, let's take a look at what is happening in Syria. We talked about it in our last DGI that Turkey is preparing to invade Syria. What is the latest on that, sir? Are they waiting for US to jump in also?
No, they have still the cabinet decision has not happened. That's number one. Number two, in the meanwhile, Erdogan is telling Russia that I'm going to do it, but I won't do anything to Bashir al-Assad, so don't be worried. Then he is telling United States, okay, I will take out, but I will not disrupt the... again, why is he doing it? It's not just terrorists. His eyes are in the Kirkuk region, Ibril region, oil. So he wants to take over those fields. That's his target. That's why he's going to that part of the world. And Kurds have stood and supported both during the Syrian invasion as well as during that the whole ISIS attacks. It was the Peshmergas who supported. It's very sad that he is seeing the vacuum and leveraging it. And I think we covered this, Shriji, which is to say we could be going into another inflation-led initiative.
Yes, indeed. And we've been writing about this for a long time, about 4 or 5 years in pgurus.com, before the video channel became popular. Sridharji, there was a time when, rebels used to control this area. And there used to be a caravan that would go from here all the way down to Turkey. And then they will go into these petrol tankers, what do you call it? I don't think barges, I think. Tankers, for lack of a better word. Now, what is supposed to happen is any tanker in high seas they're supposed to have a transponder that keeps emitting their position. This is just to make sure that if there's any mishap, that the world can respond. They used to turn off the transponder, and they'll have these small boats and then siphon off crude from there. That's how they were selling, sir. And
Yes.
all this network, guess who was the guy who was getting all the money? Erdogan's son.
Yes, Erdogan. It was Erdogan's son who collaborated with Mr. Bakatiar in
Yeah.
the drones as well. So therefore, so why not? I think that this family ecosystem is not restricted to certain one nation. It seems to be spreading to the other nations. Look, I think that this oil stealing continued even right through the Iraq war. And then
Yes.
after the partition into between Kurdistan and Kurdistan region and this region, it continued to happen. Remember, the Kurdistan, that oil rigs and oil things was controlled by that was when still the United States was in control. Khalil Azad was the head of that refining and that capacity to make sure that everything was in order. So look at this oil business or the energy business is a very interesting game of what you call persuasive collaboration that happens. As you rightly said, that a lot of things get stolen in the high seas, lots of the things are stolen in the mid seas, lots of the things are stolen in the oil tankers. The whole what you call the ISIS war was funded by the oil stolen.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Yes.
was
Yes.
stolen, were funded by the oil stolen. So it's very, very interesting. On that, on this note, just one more thing to the feather to the cap is, I'm told now the news is coming out that the Qatari the stadiums in Qatar was actually the construction was subcontract to Taliban when the discussions between the US and Taliban and the
The
other
Afghan government.
like
Yeah.
forces were going on. So they made good chunk of profit and began to build cash reserves with the work subcontracted by the Qataris. So there are no surprises, Sriji.
Another story that has been completely buried under the sand, literally, is the fact that 6,000 workers died building this new Dream 8 fields, and the entire city that has come up to host this World Soccer Cup. Very, very sad, sir. Piguls is one of the few which talked about it, but then Qatar has a lot of blood on their hands. I'm sorry, but we have gone from here and there and so on. But viewers, there's a lot of sad stories. That's all I can say. About 3,000 Indian men, able-bodied, between 18 and 30 years of age, they died of heat exhaustion. That was how they died, and very, very sad what happened. And for some reason, Indian consulate never really took Qatar to task, because the others were all smaller. There was Pakistani people, there were Bangladeshi people, there were Nepalis, but half of them were Indians. Anyway, sad, but thank you so much, Sridharji. And viewers will be back on Tuesday, bright and early again. And please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday.